A young leader with many enemies and a nuclear arsenal. Very little was known of the man when he was first introduced to the world in 2010 as heir apparent. A year later, he was in charge. Partly educated in the West, some even dared to hope that he would start to open up one of the world's most isolated countries. But then came the missiles, the nuclear tests, the purges. His rule is brutal, executions are common. He even had his uncle killed and branded a traitor in state media. On his watch, there have been 4 nuclear tests, dozens of missile tests. He's a leader in a hurry to get to his stated goal of being able to hit mainland United States with a nuclear-tipped missile, or at least convincing his adversaries that he is able to. No amount of international sanctions, of offers of dialogue, even threats of war have managed to pacify Kim's approach. Engaging in a war of words with US President Donald Trump, Kim has called Trump mentally deranged, a rogue, a gangster. Trump has called Kim a madman, even dubbing him Rocket Man.
Rocket Man is on a suicide mission for himself.
Kim Jong-un has a wife and 3 children, according to South Korea's intelligence agency. He also has a liking for basketball, as proven by his rather unlikely friendship with former NBA star Dennis Rodman. And in public, he is often all smiles, pressing the flesh with his people. The North Korean propaganda machine heralding Kim Jong-un as a godlike leader, as it did with his father and his grandfather, the 3rd generation of a dictatorial regime.
After the initial deadlock, some visible progress in the ongoing trade negotiations between South Korea and the United States. The 2 sides gathered for a second round of discussions in Washington, where they agreed to push for an amendment to their 5-year-old FTA. Kim Ji-yeon gets us up to speed with the developments.
Korea and the United States agreed to amend their bilateral free trade agreement to further strengthen mutual benefits after a second round of talks held between Trade Minister Kim Hyun-jong and his U.S. counterpart Robert Lighthizer in Washington. The Minister of Trade, Industry and Energy says the 2 sides agreed on the need for changes after extensive discussions on various issues related to the deal, as well as the focus and direction of an amendment.
Both sides each discussed in-depth sectors they're concerned about. We've presented our research findings in detail, and the U.S. has listened attentively. We've even exchanged views on some of the issues.
With this, the ministry says it will carry out necessary procedures to begin negotiations for an amendment starting next week, including a study, public hearings, and reports to the National Assembly. Heated debate is expected on the impact on the country's automobile, steel, and agricultural sectors, while the amendment process itself could be initiated early next year. Political parties from both ends of the spectrum responded that the government should prioritize national interests. The ruling Democratic Party called for cooperation from rival parties, and the main opposition Liberty Korea Party echoed the sentiment, although criticizing the government for giving into U.S. pressure. In the 5 years since the FTA came into effect in 2012, bilateral trade between the 2 countries reached $112.2 billion US, with Korea being the 6th largest trading partner of the U.S. The move is seen as a concession by Seoul to the requests from Washington, which sees the deal as unfavorable to American businesses and workers. Calls to terminate the FTA came about after U.S. President Donald Trump called it a job killer and a horrible deal during his presidential campaign last year.
My staff came back to me after 9 months and gave the mealy-mouthed, the double-talk answers that Mr. Burr and Mr. Warner presented to the public, I'd fire them.
Well, Senator Warner outdid himself in just pure blather in response to the questions. I mean, this is preposterous. And yet Mitch McConnell is not talking, obviously, with the chair and the ranking member to say, come on, guys. No one is trying to make sense or keep this in proportion. This is, I don't know if the right word is a witch hunt, but it is an obvious insult to not only the American taxpayer, but the intelligence of Americans throughout the country. to have this go forward without any evidence of any kind, no crime defined, no crime found. What in the world do they? And by the way, I'm talking with Alan Dershowitz just the other day, who said point blank, collusion is not a crime. He can't condone anything that they're doing.
Well, as I've said many times on this show, no one can name the criminal predicate. No one can tell you what law was broken. And in that regard, you know, unfortunately, Senator Burr serves as a glorified sock puppet to Senator Warner's 2020 campaign that is getting ginned up right now. This is all, you know, ad soundbite material. The other thing is they've produced supposedly 4,000 pages of witness testimony.
Good Lord.
Make it public. Put it up on the internet, and let's crowdsource it. I bet you I can come up with some conclusions to draw.
Well, I don't doubt that for a moment. Burr says that he's hit the wall. The chairman, the hardworking chairman, has hit the wall with the Trump dossier from the former British spy, Chris Steele, who, by the way, we still don't know if he was on the FBI payroll, who was throwing money at him. GPS fusion has just sort of disappeared from the conversation here. Teneo hasn't been brought up lately. Somebody has been, well, hard at work to keep them below the radar and certainly out of media attention. This smells to high heaven, and if anything, it looks like the Senate Intelligence Committee itself, with its maladroit insistence on grandstanding and persisting in the face of no evidence, they look like they are involved in the same web that is being woven across Washington.
Well, let me give the Senate Intelligence Committee some leads. I'll give them some pointers. Start off with the DNC server, then go over and have Debbie Wasserman Schultz come in and explain her relationship with the Awan brothers. Let's look at that for a while. You want to find some Russian collusion? You want to find some foreign intelligence involvement? Foreign contact and control? Look at the Awan brothers and that little gang running the email and servers for Debbie Wasserman Schultz and about 40 other Democratic members. And then ask the Republican leadership why they aren't saying the same thing that I am right now. These are legitimate, open counterintelligence questions where we have real evidence of bad.
What's really going on with Kim, the president of North Korea, is he's not the irrational people that pundits make him out to be. He's calculated that his father and grandfather were wrong, and that having a nuclear weapon was sufficient deterrent from the United States ever conducting regime change by pointing that nuclear weapon at South Korea. He's had that nuclear weapon for some time. He believes that the only way to guarantee that the United States will never ever conduct regime change is to hold the American people at